And Growth by Elias Papaioannou and Gregorius Ioannoulis, published in 2008 in the Economic Journal. This paper analyzes, as the title suggests, the causal relationship between democratization and growth, addressing a key policy question: does democratization lead to economic growth? Or more in detail, do countries that abandon democracy and consolidate representative institutions experience growth gains? The debate of the merits and drawbacks of democracy dates back to Plato and Aristotle, and it is among the most controversial yet interesting issues in political economy. And this is the reason why I decided to analyze this paper. In order to do that properly, I'm going to first introduce the theoretical and empirical framework. Then I'm going to describe the econometric specification in data employed by the authors. As the next step, I will discuss the estimates derived from the econometric models, and eventually I will present the conclusion. Starting from the theory and previous empirical evidence, we can say that there are two main and opposite views in literature regarding the relationship between democratization and growth. On the one hand, skeptical theories, on the other hand, development theories. Skeptical theories emphasize the economic inefficiencies that are determined by democracy and are mainly due to populist demands for redistribution and expropriation. Development theories instead underline the importance of democracy for development and growth, because democracy safeguards some political and economic freedoms that are crucial. In this slide, I'm also presenting two examples of empirical evidence that we can have for these two distinct theories. So, the economic success of East Asian countries validates skeptical theories because it happened under oligarchic, so non-democratic regimes. Whereas the fact that a famine has never occurred in a democratic society, as noticed by Sen, is an important proof for development theories. For completeness, there is also a third point of view, which is expressed by institutional theories, according to which there is not a direct causal relationship between the two phenomena, but rather a correlation that is determined by a third factor, which is colonial heritage or early institutions. Moving on to previous empirical studies, these were mainly cross-sectional and cross-country growth regressions that use various measures of political freedom. And the conclusion derived from these studies is that democracy has a negligible effect on growth. Anyway, if we look at the descriptive analysis of these two phenomena, we can see that there is a pattern that links them. In fact, here we have on the horizontal axis the years around the democratic transition, and on the vertical axis the real GDP per capita. We can see that in the period of transition, that is period T, the real per capita GDP growth is negative and falls down, whereas in the post-democratization period, the growth becomes positive again and stabilizes at a rate that is higher in average than the rate pre-transition. Moving on to the econometric specification and data employed by the authors, the main innovation that I want to underline is that the authors employ econometric panel techniques instead of the cross-country approach that has been previously developed. In particular, the result is a before and after event study approach or a within-country analysis that enable to analyze where is the impact of democratization in reforming countries. There are countries that made the transition from autocracy to democracy. The period of interest that is analyzed in 1960-2003, that is the so-called third wave of democratization that took place in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and also the democratization that took place in ex-communist countries in the early 1990s. So this is the regression equation that is used for the benchmark estimates. The dependent variable is the logarithmic growth rate of real per capita GDP, and the fact that we use a logarithmic growth rate is useful because we can interpret the coefficient of the regression in percentage terms. Then, the panel technique employed by the authors control for both country fixed effect alpha and year fixed effect eta t. In this way, country-specific characteristics that are invariant can be controlled, and among these characteristics we may think of geography, social factors, or colonial heritage that can all be important to determine the relationship between democratization and growth, whereas eta t controls for global trend. Then we have the vector of time varying covariance that is given by x, it minus 1, that includes variables such as income, the level of investment, or government spending. And then we have finally the regressor of interest, which is stem of it. This is an indicator variable that is constructed by the authors. It has value equal to 1 in the period in which the permanent democratic transition occurs and in all the following periods, whereas it has value equal to 0. This variable has been constructed by the authors considering 4 questions that stands for 4 important dimensions that define a democratization. These questions are: were the elections free and fair? Were civil rights and political rights respected? Was the franchise inclusive of the majority of the population? And did the elected officials enjoy real governing capacity? The fact that we use an indicator variable as the regressor of interest enables to define a difference in difference model. Difference in difference is a statistical technique employed in econometrics in order to mimic experimental research design with observation of data, and it studies the differential impact of a treatment into distinct groups, a treated group and a control group. In this model, we have that the treatment is democratization, permanent democratization. The treated group is given by the reforming countries, whereas the non-reforming countries serve as the control group. So all these features of the model combined enable to provide a specific interpretation for delta, which seems very useful. Delta is the annual average impact of democratization in reforming countries on growth compared to the general evolution of growth in non-reforming countries. These are the estimates that are derived by the model that I've just described. In particular, we can see the estimates in the column 4. We can see that the coefficient associated to democratization is equal to 1.44%. This coefficient is significant at a 1% level. It is very interesting to compare the estimates of the difference in difference model with respect to the pooled OLS estimates. We can see that in the pooled OLS model, the coefficient is significantly lower, suggesting a negligible effect of democratization on growth, and furthermore, the p-value is much higher, and we can see that the estimate is not significant from a statistical point of view. Next step for the author is to identify the timing of the effect of democratization. So the previous model is modified by introducing a series of indicator variables that represent different time periods, starting from D1 to D5. D1 represents the pre-transition period, D2 the transition period, D3 short run post-transition, and then we have the medium and the long run, respectively with D4 and D5. And in this slide, we can also see the table of the estimates derived through these models. And this table presents the evidence, the empirical and econometric evidence that enables us to give an interpretation of the previously described descriptive analysis. In fact, we can see that the coefficient that is associated to the transition period is negative, equal to minus 1.7%, whereas the coefficient becomes positive in the post-democratization period. And they are quite stable from 1.47% in the short run to 1.37% in the long run. So, combining all these results, we can have 2 main conclusions. First, the average impact of democratization on growth is positive and appears to be significant in the various models that are developed. And second, the relationship is not monotonic, but exhibits a J-shaped pattern, meaning that in the transition period, this relationship appears to be negative and volatile, but then becomes positive and stable once that there is a consolidation of democracy. The fact that we have a negative transition period also gives support to a documented pattern of the fact that crises may offer some opportunity window for democratization. And this happened, in fact, in many countries of Latin America and also in Asia. So, I want to conclude my presentation with a quote by Hayek that dates back to 1960, but gives the economic intuition that has been confirmed by the empirical research that I've presented with the paper. So it is in its dynamic rather than in its static aspect that the value of democracy proves itself. As is true of liberty, the benefits of democracy will show themselves only in the long run, while its more immediate achievements may well be inferior to those of other forms of government.
Thank you very much. Wait for questions, just in case. Any question? Anyone? Okay. This is it for today, is it? I haven't forgotten anyone yet. Like that.